Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined by Welsh and Erickson. Fellas, it's the Tuesday shows. We're talking some running backs to buy or sell today. I am fighting through a cold, as you might be able to hear in my voice. You know who is not cold, but who is actually on fire is Josh Allen and the Bills, though, coming off that Monday night performance. It was against the Jags, so take it with a grain of salt, but the Bills looked absolutely dominant. Erickson, what was your major takeaway watching that game?
James Cook is cooking because now he finally can score touchdowns, right? That was the one missing piece with James Cook. He has the rushing efficiency. He has a great role in the passing game. And now he's finally scoring touchdowns. So I really like James Cook's season-long outlook. And Khalil Shakir, man, just get that guy the ball and great things happen every single time. I don't know if he has a drop or an incompletion when Josh Allen has targeted him yet this season. Again, carrying over from last year where he basically had almost a perfect passer rating when targeted. So Shakir, to me, is a huge winner and looking like the Bills wide receiver one and the guy to own the rest of the season.
Where, Erickson, did you have Josh Allen ranked amongst quarterbacks? Because I was talked into moving him down into that like kind of QB3 range. Still a tier 1 fantasy quarterback in draft season, but I didn't have him as QB1, and that's looking like a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, early on, he's on fire, and especially with scoring down overall, he is really starting to stand out and giving you an advantage. So, I mean, I didn't have him as my QB1. I had him behind Lamar. So, Lamar's been playing well, too. So, again, I'm not so, oh, my God, I'm an idiot. But, hey, you know, Josh Allen, 3 weeks in, he is definitely the best quarterback you want for fantasy.
Welsh, what did you think watching this 47-10 demolition of the Jags?
One of the things, everything you guys said, like James Cook is rolling. But one of the really interesting things, if you guys are paying attention, was Keon Coleman. That's where I wanted to kind of put a lot of my fantasy focus on. He wasn't out for the first 2 drives. And we found out after the game that he was being punished for tardiness, apparently for meetings. And he ended up only having 1 catch. He caught his first career touchdown. The reason I think that's also really interesting is like Josh Allen, like they're almost implementing this version of like a Chiefs offense where it's like 7 different receivers can get involved. They put Marquez Valdez-Scantling in over Coleman. He was getting the snaps. Curtis Samuel gets his role. Mac Hollins, like 4, 5, 6 different pass catchers per game. But Khalil Shakir is kind of playing the Rashee Rice of that offense right now. So they're humming. Josh Allen is doing it even without some of the most talented players out there. So, I mean, I think he is just unstoppable. But, you know, for anybody that's out there on Keon Coleman, last week, 0 catches, 90% of snaps. This week, he was punished. Don't know if that makes him a starter moving forward, especially when Josh Allen can utilize Mac Hollins and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and put up 47 points or whatever. So the Bills are ridiculous.
Josh Allen was ridiculous on Monday night. There were 2 Monday night games. He might not have been the best quarterback playing because Jaden Daniels was also sensational. Welsh, what was your takeaway from this Commanders performance? They beat the Bengals 38-33. There was a note on the broadcast that this was the first game since the 40s with no punts or turnovers on either side. So a lot of offense in this one for sure. But Jaden Daniels looked amazing.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that about the punts. This was kind of what I talked about. If people watched last week, I said buy Terry McLaurin. And a lot of it was about Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was a comfortable first read guy. His adjusted completion percentage going into that game was 8th best in the NFL. And what did you see him do? Incomplete 2 passes. And he got to Terry McLaurin. They got McLaurin deep. He went over 100. I think it was 4 for 100 and a score. He got back involved. And this is evolution of a quarterback. This is what happens. Everyone's like, oh my God, he can't throw and he can't. It's 2 games. 3rd game, guess what? They start unloading the playbook a little bit. They let him start going deep. It looked great. Austin Eckler got banged up a little bit. He's been, I think, a good little extra piece to that offense. But hey, it's funny. On the Out of Bounds show, I was kind of pressing Joe. We were talking about rookies and like Caleb Williams struggling. And I literally pressed and said, like, what did you think about Jaden Daniels, like in that late surgence of him going 5 overall? And I think everybody kind of felt uncomfortable, of quarterbacks, by the way. And then he goes out and has this performance of like, this is what people were paying for. The rushing quarterback who's also really, really efficient on offense that, I don't know, weapons, it's maybe a bigger question long term, but he's utilizing them and he's just such a good, accurate quarterback with those legs. He legit might have a top 5 output rest of season because he is looking like the favorite for Rookie of the Year.
Erickson, what was your takeaway from this second Monday night game besides the fact that Jamar Chase did what we all expected him to do? He was the big no free space
of all time. Yeah. We all knew it was going to happen. Joe Burrow loaded up to go deep. I knew exactly who was going to. It was going to Jamar Chase. So feel good about that. On two ends, feel great about the bags with Offensive Rookie of the Year for Jay Daniels. Also, I'm lighting all my Bengals futures on fire. So, you can win some and you lose some. But I think that with both these teams, I think you're excited about their offenses because these teams, again, we just talked about it, no punts. These teams don't have defenses, right? So there are environments. That's what we need, right? We need teams that are pass funnels. Teams are throwing against them. They can't stop opposing offenses. Monday night saved us offensively. Going into Monday night, we had 3 straight weeks of scoring down consecutively. Now, I don't know the exact numbers after these obviously 2 explosive games, so I'm assuming it's not necessarily the case, but these are teams that we want to be having pieces of. So even if T. Higgins, he struggled, it was his first game back, he still had a bunch of red zone targets. So keep in mind the usage of these types of players and be excited about these offenses moving forward.
Let's jump into our running backs that we're going to talk about on today's show. Here it is, the week 4 running back buy low, sell high. I shouldn't say buy low. We are still considering this can be buy lows or buy highs, sell lows or sell highs. But we're talking about the running backs here to kick things off. And Welsh, we'll start with you. What running back are you looking to buy right now?
We are looking at someone that we all were loving going into week 3, Rhamondre Stevenson with the Patriots, who is coming off of his worst game of the year. And fun fact, I went and took a look at this. This was the worst performance of his career outside of his very first game in his rookie year where he had negative points. He had, I think, half PPR, 0.7 points here. And I don't want to blanket this, but I got to tell you, those are the type of outliers for me that scream buy situations, especially like workhorse dominant players that are coming off of their absolute worst performance and people freaking out. Rhamondre Stevenson lost people some leagues, screwed me in a league. Actually, in the FantasyPros content league, I think it was. He put that 0.7 up for me. But as unexciting as this Patriots offense is, he is still the dominant piece. He's still getting 100% of the carries inside the 5, which they got to get there. He's top 10 in yards after contact as far as running backs when you filter out attempts. There's a couple like weird guys that are in there. And 13% in snap percentage and 5th best running back in team percentage of expected fantasy points at 28%. So that's a lot right there. But he's the 5th best running back of their team's percentage of expected fantasy points, according to fantasy points data. That's a 28% marker. So he's still getting the workload. He is still the force of this offense, and he is coming off of a really bad performance where people are freaking out. Week 3 is a really critical time in fantasy too. This is another little, it's like a trade thing, but you can start to kind of maybe take advantage. Teams are 0-2 or 1-2, 0-3. You can start pressing, and that panic button is not just hit once. It starts to get smashed. People are taking hammers and they're breaking the glass and they're just trying to smash that button. So in those instances, guys like Rhamondre Stevenson, they can get put out for a much lower cost than it would have been if this performance had a couple weeks ago. So I think, again, he is the force of this offense. He is the touchdown magnet. You do have to question about how much they're going to be put into it. And I will say they're going up against the 49ers this week, which on paper would have seemed like, oh, this is a good matchup, but everybody's hurt. They just lost Hargrove for the whole season, tore his tricep. That's on the interior line. That's exactly where Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be pounding the ball. And the 49ers haven't been that great against stopping the run. So I actually think this 49ers matchup is not the worst on the planet for him coming up this week, especially with all those injuries and the Niners just reeling. And I think he's just a great buy right now. So go and take those opportunities to buy those under 1 point performers that we know are double-digit guys in Rhamondre Stevenson.
Obviously, Erickson, this was a big gap from week 2 to week 3, but Rhamondre has gone down from weeks 1 to 2 and then again from 2 to 3 in terms of the number of snaps he's played, in terms of the yards he's gotten, in terms of the efficiency. As a Patriots fan, what do you make of him? Not just his role in the offense, but how good the offense will be for him to take advantage of whatever his role is.
Well, it's really based on his performance, right? You talked about how this was one of his worst games. Well, that was because it was also one of the worst Patriots games, right? He is the engine to the offense. So if he's able to function like he did in weeks 1 and 2, well, the Patriots are going to play in games where they maybe have a chance to win. You know that in this particular game against the Jets, he had one nice run and he injured his finger on that play. And then he was getting looked on the sideline and then he was missing snaps, which is why his snap share was so low. So again, when you're looking at buy low, sell high, yes, you got to buy at the stone cold bottom floor. And that's how it is with Rhamondre, as Welsh pointed out here. So given the matchup against the 49ers, they have extra time. So Rhamondre should get fed. Again, he's going to get the volume. Like that should not be a concern. He should get volume in this matchup. So I think that it's a sharp play by Welsh. And again, Welsh knows his 49ers, and he or should I say what do you call them? The fraudy Niners? Is that what you call them?
Yeah, the fraudulent Niners, the fraud Niners, fraudy Niners.
It's
embarrassing.
Rhamondre is RB21 in our consensus rest of season rankings. That's in half PPR. Does that sound to you, Welsh, too high, too low, just right?
Yeah, it's like the poor. It's like just about right of like, I think the perception of it. But I think what the positive is a guy like Rhamondre is going to probably come for the people that are freaking out. It's going to come at a lower cost. You take the bad performance, you take what is perceived as like the downtick and a bad week 4 matchup against the 49ers, and you put that into that recipe of the person that's 1-2 or 0-3, and it's to a boiling point. And that's where I think mid 20s, low 20s, like 21, 22, that's the right range. But I still think he has like near that top 15 upside because of usage overall. And the offense does run through him. So good rank right now. Buy him in that, for the cost of a 25 to 28 type of running back with the upside of like a 15 to 18 RB.
I think with Stevenson too, you're not really worried about like a job security, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these running backs that we're freaking out about, oh my God, they're losing their job. Rhamondre's not losing his job because if he's not on the field, the offense is just worse overall. So I think that's another point where, yes, is he going to be a top 10 running back? Probably not. But is he going to be someone that you can still use every single week because of the volume he's getting and the fact that he is the RB1 undisputed? I think that's definitely a positive.
Somebody who might have more job security than we expected is the running back you're looking to buy, Erickson.
Yeah, I'm looking at rookie running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, Carson Steele. So I wasn't sure what I was going to expect to see from him in his first basically start for the Chiefs in the wake of the Isaiah Pacheco injury, but I was really impressed, especially with the usage he got. He rushed for 72 yards. He had 18 touches overall, and he was the guy when we expected him to get the red zone usage, and he did, except that just Chiefs weren't able to convert. So, he had 2 attempts inside the 5-yard line. He had 6 carries inside the 20. So, again, this is at least in theory, should be a high-powered offense. The Chiefs are still kind of working through things, but this is an upside play. And I think with Steele, he played 62% of the snaps. Basically, his entire role, he also ran more routes than Samaje Perine. His role was not very dissimilar to what we've seen from Isaiah Pacheco. Like, he basically took on that role, and I think that that's being kind of undersold a little bit, where he's Carson Steele, who is this guy, but he was productive, like per next gen stats. So 60 of his 72 rushing yards was between the tackles, and despite not getting a single run of 10 plus yards, he had positive EPA on 12 of 17 carries. So even though he didn't rip off the big run or score that touchdown, he was really efficient. Again, through 3 weeks among qualified runners, he has the ranking of number 1 in success rate on the ground. So he's getting yardage and he's moving the chains every single time he gets the ball. What do coaches do when they see that? Let's give him the ball more. Again, the Chiefs offense has looked out of sync. Maybe they try to establish the run a little bit more. They have a guy that I think that can produce here. So I think with Steele specifically, I think that he's a player that you can buy because, number 1, he was a waiver wire player. So there's no draft capital attached to him. People may look at him as a luxury that they can deal off for a player that is maybe drafted a little bit higher during draft season. And there's a lot of concerns about, what about Kareem Hunt? What about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Those guys aren't good. Right? I just don't have any belief that those guys are going to come back and unseat Carson Steele in this RB1 role or 1A role in the Chiefs offense. So I could be wrong about that. But again, when you're buying and selling, like, you're going to take on some risk in some capacity. So I think Carson Steele, I think he's going to be the RB1 until Elise Pacheco comes back, and he's coming off a broken leg, right? We saw Tony Pollard. It took him a long time to come back from a very similar injury. So I think Steele set up really well here in the Chiefs offense. So I'm kind of buy him.
Welsh, what do you think? I was kind of going into this expecting to see the Chiefs just pass a whole lot more and not really have one running back kind of assume the mantle that Pacheco vacated with the injury, but it really did seem like Steele. 17 carries, nobody else had more than 6. And the only other person to even get, a running back carry was Perine at 6. So it seemed to be very heavily in Steele's favor there in a way I didn't expect. Did you have any takeaways from this first game without Pacheco that makes you kind of more inclined to buy Steele the same way Erickson is?
Yeah, I love this one. I'll tell you right now, every single name that Erickson has on running backs when we do wide receivers, are names that I considered and almost put up. And then I just like talked myself out of different directions for. And Steele was somebody, Erickson and I did the prop show on Betting Pros, that I went playing the under this week because the Chiefs were averaging around 26 carries per game through the first 2 weeks. And just like you said, Worm, I thought they were going to pass more. I also thought this was going to be more rotational. So you gave me 26 carries and you broke it between P. Ryan and then maybe a little bit of Worthy, which we saw, and Mahomes running, that you might only have like 12, 13 equity for Carson Steele, but we had more because they ran the ball more, because he was efficient. He looked great. He didn't lose yards. He continued. It's just every time you saw him get the ball, looked like he got 4 or 5 yards every single play. Thought he looked efficient. There's no reason that this team isn't going to give him more of that. The only concern is when they do play around with rotation, because they like P. Ryan, I think. I mean, even they use Steele out of the passing game. They like P. Ryan in that. Maybe just pointing out CEH, I believe, is eligible to come back in week 5. He's been dealing with a lot of stuff, but they still love him in that offense. They used him to weird degrees last season. That could happen. But I just don't think that changes my tune of like, Carson Steele is a dude that can absolutely roll out 20 carries a game, super efficient, not explosive. But if you're going to get 18 for 80 every single week with touchdown potential, yeah, man, Carson Steele's a good one. And I am worried about Pacheco's long-term effects for the rest of the season. They say 6 to 8 weeks. I don't even think that has him coming back on the field. He's a violent runner. That violence you've got to take extra care for. And I think there's quite a few teams that might, and this could be a disadvantage, specifically the 49ers, that might be looking to the future and the health of what do we have on the back half of the year? What do we have for the playoffs? I personally kind of think Travis Kelce might be in that space where they're slow rolling him. The 49ers might probably going to look at that with Christian McCaffrey. No reason to bring him back because Jordan Mason's playing great. Let's save him to the very end. Same thing with Pacheco. If Carson Steele is getting it done and you got P. Ryan and a CEH kind of playing that receiving role, what are we worried about? What are we worried about? So Carson Steele, I think, is a really great buy, similar to what we talked about last week with Jordan Mason. You're buying that you can get him for longer. I would not be shocked if we got 10 solid weeks out of Carson Steele here. So this is a great call by Erickson.
RB 30 in our rest of season rankings, according to consensus. Again, that's half PPR. Erickson, is that too high, too low, or just right?
I believe I have him RB 29. So I think that it's appropriate. Again, you have to, at least when I do my rest of season rankings, I am trying to capture kind of like the market's perspective on these certain players, because I know a lot of people use rest of season rankings. At least I use it to try to calculate trades when I'm not using the trade analyzer. So I think that it's appropriate.
The only thing I want to point out that I think it's tricky about that is this is just my opinion. I feel like when a running back is perceived rest of season value outside or at 30, you start to lose doesn't matter if they're going to play 6 weeks and they're going to lose it or the rest of the season, that people are going to look and be like, okay, yeah, you know what? That's cool. He's 30. But I still want the price of this RB 30 rest of season. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the Jordan Mason one might've been different because that was a guy that, while he's starting is a top 5 RB every single week. But when McCaffrey comes back, there's this big line of equity that's lost. So there's a big price discrepancy between paying for a top 5 RB and a guy that, could drop all the way down into the mid 20s. For a guy that's already being ranked around 30s, it's like, what really type of discount are you going to get when you're buying on him? So, I mean, that's a kind of theory conversation and we don't need to go nuts with it. But I guess my point, if you're not grasping, is like the weird thing about Steele is I don't know if you're really going to get a discount because he's only going to play for 6 weeks. I think you're still going to have to pay 30-ish value for him. And I think that's okay. I also think that's just okay to do that. But I don't think there's much of a discount on the potential lost time in the future on Steele. Erickson, I don't know if you're following what I'm saying or you agree or disagree.
No, I agree. There's that ambiguity, right? Because, well, how long is he going to be the guy? But
it's also like he's already a low cost for a starter. That's the tricky part.
Right. And again, when we look at our weekly rankings, is he going to be RB 30 in week 4? Probably not. He's probably going to be higher than because we know at least in week 4, he's just like with Ford, he's not ranked, or excuse me, with Mason, he's not ranked where he is rest of season ranking in the weekly rankings because he's in the Christian McCaffrey role or the beta Christian McCaffrey role, just about the receiving. So he's a top 10 running back. So yeah, but I think these are the questions that you have to ask and gives you an opportunity to buy, right? Again, because sometimes buys and sells seem so obvious, but with these types of players, it isn't so obvious because we could look up in a month from now and be like, oh my God, it was an amazing trade. Or we could look up in a month from now and be like, oh my God, Kareem Hunt took over the backfield. This was a horrible trade. So it can really go either way, and which is why the RB30 almost is kind of like a hedge to an extent.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6. Whatever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure, touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, from the special teams or defense, we don't care how they score, and we just want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many touchdowns will be in a game. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. There are a few stellar matchups in week 4, including Arizona-Washington with the highest point total of the week at 50.5 points. Definitely expecting lots of touchdowns in that one. Plus, the primetime schedule is sweet, highlighted by Ravens-Bills on Sunday Night Football with the Ravens laying 2.5 points. Seahawks-Lions on Monday Night Football with the Lions laying 4 points. Lines and odds are subject to change on those. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Welsh, what running back are you selling?
Sometimes we've got to state the obvious. And I want to be careful about stating the obvious while also not making it a panic mode. But the running back that I am selling is Bucks Rachaad White. And I think that's going to probably be a popular conversation here. Some of the negatives that are probably blatantly obvious. He's on a 3-week decline as far as carries. He had 6 carries in this past game. He is currently averaging 2.1 yards per carry, which is blah. Only a 44% attempt percentage. So of the attempts, the rushing attempts, 44%, and that is one of the lowest. And he's got the 4th highest stuff percentage, according to Fantasy Points data, which is really just like, guys that are losing yards, not getting over 4 yards, stuff like that. But their stuffed percentage, the 4th highest at 61% of, and that, by the way, the 4th is of any starting running back. Those numbers, that stuff percentage is worse than like Devontae Williams, Swift, and Zeke are the only guys above him. He is the 4th below that group. But a lot of this is about Bucky Irving, because one thing you can still give him an advantage to, he's getting a high snap percentage. It's like in the 70% range because Rachaad White is involved in the passing game. He had 5, didn't do much with it, but had 5 catches this past week. He's always going to be involved in that. But Bucky is looking like a better running back. He's currently averaging over 6 yards per carry and is also top 20 in the league in yards after contact per attempt at over 3. And we can't always believe what the coaches tell us. Antonio Pierce, Zamir White. But what we can believe in this instance is a super effective running back, and that team saying Bucky Irving has earned more playing time. So he's going to take share away from Rachaad White. Rachaad White's always been cool in the passing game, and he'll have games, and I don't think he's done by any means, but we're going from what was a teens RB to, I think, Rachaad White sitting in that 20 range of RB, probably at best. And I think Bucky Irving right now is a flex option to play. He looks super explosive. And this is coming off of a bad game, so it makes it kind of tough. But this is about getting out from Rachaad White while you can still get equatable value, in the 90 percentile range. But the problem is, and this is coming back to what I started with stating the obvious, we all kind of know that Rachaad, it's not great right now. We know Bucky Irving's going out there. So you're going to have to be tricky about those trades. Try to find someone that wants to buy back in, maybe full PPR where Rachaad White's a tiny bit more valuable. But I really would not be surprised if Bucky Irving is the most valuable back in the system by the end of the year. But he's not going away anytime soon unless there's injury. And that's only going to tick down Rachaad White's usage, especially as far as carries go. So I am selling Rachaad White where I can, but not for just nothing.
Definitely more of a sell low than a sell high. Erickson, what kind of value do you think you can get for Rachaad White right now?
See, yeah, this is the loaded question, right? Because everybody's down on Rachaad White, so that makes it really tough. And it's like, does this price become so suppressed that he does it's like the reversal where it's like, well,
100%.
Do you then just buy him because he's free, right? I guess for me, it's like, when I was doing my rest of season rankings, was I confident putting Rachaad White above Bucky Irving? Am I just or like when I do it next week, am I just going to put Bucky Irving ahead of Rachaad White? So why don't I just do it now, right? Because that's the way the tides are starting to shift. Even like rewatching that game and listening back to the broadcast. And actually, interesting enough, on Bucky Irving's 2 big plays, Rachaad White was also on the field, right? So it's a little bit different because you look at the snaps haven't really increased with Irving, but because White was also on the field. It's weird because they were faking it to White, and the team's like, they're not giving him the ball. Why would they give Rachaad White the ball? But yeah, Irving has looked more explosive. He should have scored. They both should have scored touchdowns. Rachaad White got stuffed at the 1 yard line. Bucky Irving fell short of a 1 yard score. So maybe if Irving had scored, maybe the desire for him would be better. Maybe you just make that straight up trade, right? Rachaad White for Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving is a guy that someone picked up off the waiver wire. But when we talk about this show in week 4 or week 5, who's going to be the lead running back? Listening back on the broadcast, they talked about how Bucky Irving was going to get the lion's share. The broadcasters were talking about how he was going to get the lion's share of the totes, essentially is what the broadcasters said, which I was like, oh, that's fun. So they had intel with what Todd Bowles has been selling us that, yes, we want to get him more carries and get Rachaad White out of carries. Now, on the spin side of it, talking about how White has been ineffective as a rusher, he's not getting any points as a rusher anyway, right? So if they take away all of his carries, oh no, I lost 10 yards of rushing. That's not going to change his fantasy appeal. So I guess maybe it's like less sell Rachaad White for nothing and more buy Bucky Irving. Like that's
but I don't
what
think
you really want to do.
But I don't think we're at, and that's my main point here. I don't think we're at sell Rachaad White for nothing stage. I'm trying to get ahead of sell Rachaad White for nothing stage because I don't think the poor performance does kind of mess it up. But again, I think that week 3 into week 4 critical space is where people are going to take some much bigger shots in trades. 2 weeks from now, we might be in Rachaad. You can't get Chase Brown for Rachaad White. You can't get Rico Dowdle, who looks like he's kind of ticking up a little bit. But right now, I still think you can. And the play might be moving off of, man, if you have the waiver wire and you were able to get Bucky Irving and you had Rachaad White, and then you could trade Rachaad White for another buy low on a wide receiver side. That's kind of, I think, where my focus is. But don't be shocked if, he does maintain a value. I think whatever it is, it's lower than this week. But also don't be shocked if it's gone completely. And then you're talking about what you're saying, Erickson, where what is the worth of trading a Rachaad White when no one wants to buy him for literally anything? And I think that's what we're just trying to get ahead of.
I think changing your perspective on what Rachaad White is, he's not a 3-down bell cow. He is more of he's like the pass catching back on this team. And it's a question mark. Really, the biggest question mark is who gets red zone usage, right? Because so far up to this point, it's been Rachaad White. So does that change? I would assume if Bucky Irving is ripping off big runs, they're going to reward him by giving him red zone touches. So that's where I would lean. So again, it feels weird to put Rachaad White into the Jaleel McLaughlin type of territory as a pass catching back that, okay, he's got some flex appeal in PPR. That's Rachaad White now. So again, if you are getting a fair deal on that, then that's where I think just changing your perspective. Again, you drafted Rachaad White in round 4 or whatever. Got to throw it out the window. That's no longer relevant for his new role and what his new role is going to be. So I'm not sure if we came to a decisive decision here. At least I didn't, but just talking through it, I don't know. Worm, what are your thoughts on Rachaad White?
I don't have Rachaad White anywhere because I was fading him heavily this whole draft season. And I wish I had more Bucky Irving. I can't flex that much because I didn't get Irving. I just don't have anybody in this backfield. But I literally can't sell Rachaad White anywhere because I don't have him anywhere. I would agree. I would sell him right now for whatever you could get. I think this is only going to continue to trend in the wrong direction. The exception to that would be if you're in a really deep league, it's PPR, like there will be some value there. Like, sure, you can just sort of reframe your mind of like looking at him as more of a flex option than a weekly starter or, whatever. It depends on your scoring settings. But if you get anything of value for him, I would move on happily because I've never been a Rachaad White.
So for example, I got Darnell Mooney on my bench. Can I get Rachaad White? Is that because that's what I mean? Like that's probably what his market value is right now. Just say,
I think I know what I know what you're saying here. I think it's still a little bit low, but like those are the leagues where you may be like, I don't know. It's got to be a notch up. Like Darnell Mooney's a good one. Like Pop Douglas, Darnell Mooney, those are going to be actually like top waiver guys this week. But I think you have to take like that notch step above of wide receivers that, it's kind of like a mid-30s wide receiver. Like, who's a mid-30s wide receiver in that general range that maybe is in the semi-underperforming? Last week, it would have been Terry McLaurin. That would have been the type of guy, but now you can't do that. I can't think of a name off the top. It's not popping off the top of my head. I'm trying to think as we go. Maybe Demarcus Robinson, but that still might be a little too low. I think you can go a tiny bit higher.
Do you think that you can trade Rachaad White for Bucky Irving? If he gets if they say he's added off waivers this week, you see the waiver process through, do you think you can make that trade?
It's possible. You know what's interesting about that is the people that are doing I want to trade Ayuk for Juwan Jennings crew, where it's like, I don't like that, but it has that same kind of vibe, except I think I might do the Bucky Irving one, and I'm not going to trade Ayuk for Jennings.
I have Rachaad White in Dynasty League, and I'm thinking about it hard.
For Bucky?
So, yeah, I mean, look, they're both young running backs, right?
I would definitely do it in a dynasty.
Well, in a dynasty, it's not even close, but yeah.
What do you mean? Rachaad White's not like that old. I mean, you just, I guess maybe
he's
I should then.
But if we think Bucky Irving might be better already and he's younger, why would you not?
And he's a future 3-down back. I mean, one thing, and there's a long conversation about Rachaad White, I want to point out is you said you were talking about the usage and stuff like that, and Rachaad White doesn't get any his value on the other side. It's all receiving, except the team tried to do this last year and they failed. And then Rachaad White was everything. Like, they have 3 years are selling us, it's going to be Tucker, it's going to be Keyshawn, it's going to be all these guys. And it's never those guys. And it ends up just being all Rachaad White. Well, guess what? They found the guy. And they found the guy that can get Rachaad White off. So as much as you say he doesn't get his value from the rushing side, like, that's still part of his game. Now you're going to take touches away from him. And it's cool if he gets 5 or 6 catches, but now he's like Eckler in Washington instead of being, Eckler with the Chargers, where his value was still better as a receiver there, but he was getting some of that rushing equity. So that's kind of the concern with it. But I think we're still reaching a little too low. You know what? Comments below. You got Rachaad White. If you've seen some offers, would love to know what you can get and what's the best offer. That's what we should come back. What's the best offer someone got for Rachaad White? I want to hear.
Somebody did offer me Rachaad White for my J.K. Dobbins, and I respectfully declined. So
that is where we're at. That's why this is tough.
By the way, Rachaad White is 25 and a half, and Bucky Irving just turned 22. So there's like a 3.5 year difference. Bucky Irving actually shares my birthday, so good for him. That makes me want to
go
move
get
him,
boys.
Go get it. It's your guy. That's it.
Erickson, what running back are you selling?
I'm going to sell Kyren Williams after he scored 3 touchdowns, because this is my process of selling running backs at their peak, right? I know I talked about it on the trade show, or my trade video, talking about Alvin Kamara coming off a monster game. And it's just hard to repeat. Even if, they don't fall off completely, it's just hard for them to match that peak performance. And I think that's what we saw here from Kyren Williams. 24 carries, 89 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, another one through the air. Ronnie Rivers basically never played. Blake Corum didn't play in the game. Kyren Williams had a 90% snap share. I'm just concerned about how long he can hold up. Again, we saw last year him be a monster. He's seeing all the snaps, and then he broke down as the season progressed. They brought in more running backs. They drafted Blake Corum because we want to ease it off of Kyren. But then all the receivers and the offensive line all got hurt. So, okay, we got to turn back to Kyren 90% snap roll because we have no other shot of making this offense work. So in the short term, while the Rams are still figuring things out, maybe this can be productive. But I just have concerns about him long-term, kind of holding up to this type of workload, keeping it sustainable, especially with the injuries on the Rams offensive line. So I think for me, look, going into last week, there was definitely pessimism about Kyren Williams. We knew he would get the workload and the volume ended up being enough, but still, he's not been efficient this year. He's bottom 10 in terms of rushing yards above expectation per attempt. So it's a volume-driven play. And what happens with running backs that see a ton of volume, those are the guys that are more likely to get banged up as the season progresses. So he's not winning with efficiency, which I don't like. I have concerns about the Rams offense overall and their long-term outlook. So I think that you were gifted a great thing with Kyren Williams scoring 3 touchdowns, a monster game. And I think you can flip him for a more steady asset at running back for the rest of the season.
Welsh, what are you doing with Kyren?
Yeah, I love this one. As I said earlier, everything that Erickson put on here was on my short list of picks when we're doing analysis for trying to figure out who are some good buys and sells. 3 touchdowns on an offense. Hey, listen, they embarrassed the 49ers, but I don't believe it's a great offense right now without Cooper Kupp and without Puka Nacua. And they did it against the 49ers. So 3 touchdowns against a perceived really solid defense really ups that equity. I've laughed all off season and all season long so far about the Blake Corum stuff, but there is probably going to be a point this year, much later than everybody was expecting, that we will start to see some of those guys. And I just think I couldn't agree more with where Erickson's at, that if you can take advantage of, he did it again, a good defense, all those touchdowns, maybe someone out there, man, there really is nobody else with the Rams right now. It's got to be all Kyren. If you can sell that on the high, I think I'm there for it. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but like the dream scenario is someone is like, boy, do I hate the Dolphins quarterback situation. They're not going to be able to move anymore. Achane was all right and everything like that. Maybe I need to move off of it, and you can go and move a Kyren for that. Again, that's being like way too optimistic about it. But those are the type of things that you're kind of looking for in some of those, maybe buying lower on another player and selling high off of this huge performance from Kyren. But either way, I think I'm putting him out there to see what the market looks like.
Guys, low testosterone affects about 30% of adult men in America. Are you feeling the drag of fatigue, noticing a dip in muscle mass, or sensing a slump in libido? If so, it's time to get your testosterone levels tested. If you have low T, KYZATREX is an FDA-approved pill that's changing the game in testosterone replacement therapy. In fact, KYZATREX restored testosterone levels in nearly 9 out of 10 clinical study participants, and its unique formulation bypasses the liver to avoid liver damage. It's time to break free from injections, pellets, and gels. Choose KYZATREX and take a step toward being the hero of your life again. To learn more, visit KYZATREX.com. That's KYZATREX.com. By prescription only, KYZATREX is a controlled substance and can be a target of abuse. KYZATREX is not for use in pregnant women or men with prostate or breast cancer. Safety and efficacy in those younger than 18 is not known. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions and medications. Serious side effects could include increased blood pressure, worsening prostate symptoms, increased risk of prostate cancer, blood clots in the legs or lungs, decreased sperm count, liver problems, enlarged or painful breasts, and breathing problems while you sleep. Common side effects include swelling of the ankles, feet, or body, increased red blood cell count, and increase in prostate-specific antigen or PSA levels. PSA is a test used to detect prostate cancer. Report those symptoms to your doctor. Call your doctor to learn more about KYZATREX. For questions or more information, visit www.kyzatrex.com or call 1-833-949-5040. All right, guys, let's do some quick buy, sell, or hold for running backs. We've got a few of these trios here. Starting off with J.K. Dobbins, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery. Welsh, which of those are you buying, selling, or holding? Again, that's Dobbins, Pollard, and Montgomery.
Of course, you start with me on this one. I knew it. I knew that's what was going to happen. All right, I am going to buy David Montgomery, hold J.K. Dobbins, and sell Tony Pollard. And I will be honest with you, I'm not sure there is a definitive, like we've done these before where it's like, this guy's clearly the sell. I've been selling, J.K. Dobbins to a degree, but something last week with the change in usage, like Gus Edwards, they stopped doing the split and they're just like, oh, we're better off with J.K. Dobbins. I think that's like a really key thing, especially if that continues. Maybe he is the sell still, just, with Herbert being out, but I think there's a sustainability that's out there. I'm really worried about the Titans just in general. Pollard, he has been kind of the force, but I wouldn't be shocked as the season goes on. You get more Tajay Spears as they fall off. And Dave Montgomery's just a rock, man. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, he is as great as can be, but he just doesn't take that, that running force away from David Montgomery as that team scores. So buy Montgomery, hold Dobbins, sell Pollard, do the exact opposite now, Erickson. I know it.
Erickson, what do you think?
I'm going to buy J.K. Dobbins. Because even though he didn't rip off a big run, he dominated the touches over Gus Edwards, which when you think about his long-term outlook, that actually probably matters more. That's probably more sustainable than him ripping off these massive runs every single week. So I want to buy Dobbins. I wasn't really convinced either way with sell hold. Again, I don't want to sell Pollard after he has a bad game. I just don't think that that's how you get a strong return. Well, as Dave Montgomery, the Lions were going to run the ball no matter what in this specific matchup. So I think this was definitely a highlight for Dave Montgomery. This is not to say that he's going to be useless, but I think that you can probably get more for him than you can for Tony Pollard. So I'm going to hold Pollard till he has a better week, and I would sell Dave Montgomery just based on his recent performance.
The exact opposite. You actually did it the exact opposite.
I think on Dobbins, just quickly, like I don't think there's any case for selling him besides the obvious of the potential injury down the line. Because I think all the usage we've seen, all the performance we've seen, like I don't really think there's a strong case for selling him. except for that. And that is a totally valid thing if that's what you want to lean towards. I mean, Erickson, you talked about it earlier in the year that we would expect a strong start and then maybe get rid of him when he can. Again, it looks awesome. So if he stays healthy, that would be a huge mistake, but that's kind of the looming question over Dobbins. Let's do another trio. Buy, sell, or hold. Devin Singletary, Najee Harris, Zach Charbonnet. Erickson, what do you think here?
I'm going to buy Singletary because he's been a low-key bell cow and he's playing the Dallas Cowboys. They cannot stop the run against any team that they face. Devin Singletary is not Derrick Henry, but he's still going to be really productive. And the Giants just have a very favorable schedule for running backs in general over the next couple of weeks. So I like Singletary as a buy. And he's also not a player that has this name cachet. Oh, Devin Singletary, he's kind of viewed as a jag running back, but he's been really productive. And he has a full workload in that Giants offense. So I like Singletary as a buy. I would hold Najee just because of the injury to Jaylen Warren. The Steelers have arguably, again, talking about the Dallas Cowboys, the Steelers have they have the Colts and the Cowboys the next 2 weeks. Arguably the two leagues NFL's worst run defenses for the most run-heavy team on offense. So Najee, again, he's dealing with an injury. He has his arm was seen in a sling, so that's just the concern where you have to hold him just until we figure out more news about this injury. And then I will sell Charbonnet just based on he's been a monster. Kenneth Walker will be coming back at some point, and I think you can get a lot for him potentially. Again, this goes into what's the market price. If your league is afraid that he's going to lose all of his work, then you have to hold Charbonnet. But if someone thinks, oh, Charbonnet's taken over, Ken Walker's dust, then I would sell Charbonnet for the most.
Welsh, what do you think?
Yep, Charbonnet is the sell here for everything that Erickson said. The only difference is I'm going to flip. I'm obviously a tiny bit concerned about Najee in the sling, but a lot of the conversation out there looks like it just might be a sprain and it's precautionary. So we're going to have to watch that. Why I'm buying Najee. Jaylen Warren is being phased out of this offense. Obviously they may adjust that. He's going to get an MRI. So there's the injury perspective. But even when that wasn't happening, he just wasn't taking a big force out of Najee Harris in a run heavy team with Arthur Smith. So I love the matchups coming there. I love Najee being the guy. I hope he's not hurt. So he's my buy because if there was no injury attached to this whatsoever, I think this would actually even be more of a slam dunk of a buy. So give me Najee Harris on the buy. Let's hold Devin Singletary and sell Charbonnet.
Last one here, Jonathan Brooks, Bucky Irving, who we just talked about, and Nick Chubb, buy, sell, or hold. Welsh, we'll start with you here.
We're going to sell Nick Chubb. God knows if he's coming back. He's a freak of nature, of course. And when I will say this, when and if he comes back, with how they've used this Brown situation, I wouldn't be surprised if he took it over completely as they throw out guys like Foreman and everything like that. But in that same respect, you just can't let him get that normal workload in. So it will be, in my idea, Jerome Ford, Nick Chubb, probably in a split to try to keep him healthy for the year. So I'm selling on Nick Chubb, especially anybody that's looking to buy at this point because they think he's going to be coming back like gangbusters. It's really tough, these other two on the buy hold. But I'm going to buy Bucky Irving and I'm going to hold Jonathan Brooks. I could easily flip this and say, what a great time. Jonathan Brooks hasn't played. He's still on the IR. He's almost back. The Panthers offense is humming now with Andy Dalton. This is a go. Yes, I agree with all of that. This is like buy, sell, which it is. But Bucky Irving, we've kind of talked about it ad nauseum. I'm in for what he's going to do. So I think it's a really good buy because you can get him at waiver wire fodder right now. And I'm going to hold on Jonathan Brooks. We do still have to see what's all going to happen when he comes in. What does it take away from Chuba? We can wave bye-bye to Miles Sanders. So that's my play. What do you think, Erickson?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about Rachaad White, Bucky. I mean, I think you got to buy Bucky Irving. I think that's the main takeaway from today's show is find a way to get Bucky on your team, whether it's waiver wire, whether it's trade, find a way. Send Rachaad White packing and grab Bucky Irving. So I'm going to buy Irving as well. I guess selling Nick Chubb. I mean, you've been rostering this guy. I guess I'm not really sure what your hope was. I mean, the Browns haven't really shown that much on offense too. Again, it's going back to, okay, you have two guys coming off injuries, but obviously one is much younger. And the offense, I think, at least under Andy Dalton, has shown so much more than Nick Chubb and the Browns. Maybe that Chubb is the missing piece, or maybe just not the year for the Browns to be invested in this offense. Whereas Carolina, maybe we need pieces of this offense. So Brooks would be the guy I would hold, and unfortunately, selling my guy Nick Chubb.
Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel where you can come and ask your specific trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. That'll do it for the Running Backs show. For Erickson and Welsh, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.